We recognise the accent, don't we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Whereabouts are you from?
Oh, well, at the moment I live in Cambridgeshire, and previously I was from Mid-Ulster. I don't know if you're familiar with Northern Ireland. There's different...
We are. My wife's mother came from Northern Ireland.
Okay, yeah, so originally from the County Armagh area.
Yeah.
My family was from Tyrone.
Tyrone, yeah, I know Tyrone very well, yeah.
Oh, well, you know Cookstown?
I know Cookstown.
There's someone positive in the house. I don't need to isolate
Wow.
or anything.
That's weird.
Very strange.
Okay.
Nothing makes sense. So, but they did isolate, so because it's like doesn't make sense. So,
Okay, guys. So we're starting about 2 minutes. Just
so I
waiting
just
for.
kept them isolating.
Okay, guys. So we're starting about 2 minutes. Just waiting for other people to come in. Just giving the people a bit of time.
Yeah.
Okay. Fix.
Way.
Coming away, especially today.
Oh, sorry.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi, Dad. Are you
Can
alright?
I move up a bit? I'm good.
Where's Theo gone? Is he still there, or has he gone to bed?
No, he's occupying himself over there. I said, do you want to come and see Granny? And he said no.
Well, he's seen her all day.
Do you want to come and say hi? Sade's there.
Okay, as we're starting in about 2 minutes.
Sade, Theo.
About 2 minutes.
Too busy, apparently.
Bless him.
Don't tell me he's got the switch, hasn't he? I thought
He's
so.
way too good at that.
He hasn't had it all day, so he's making the most of it now before he goes to bed.
Oh, didn't you allow him to have it?
No, you had to do that one.
Right, so it's like. Oops.
Oh, t-shirt I like. Yeah. Top I like, Jonathan.
Thank you. Thank you. Right.
Oh, you can come off the screen if you want to see them. Yeah.
Okay, guys, let's make a start.
Just listen.
So, this is the Great British Bible Talk, and today we are talking about the mindset of a leader. So, as normal procedure goes, please, no one, if I ask you a question, do not raise your hand. Instead, I want you to give a hand pop like this. I'm just going to demonstrate. Hand pop like that. When you want to answer a question, just go ahead, give me a little pop. And this isn't a classroom, okay? We want to be interactive, we want to discuss. So just to warm you guys up with the first question, and just raise your hand if you want to be this. Who here is a leader? Who here is a leader? Awesome. You've got some hands raised. That's good.
Used to be.
Not anymore.
We're
Come
retired.
on.
We don't have to do it.
What's wrong with you?
No, I think we still got a bunch of leaders here. I believe that you guys are here because there's a leader in you. And let me ask you this question: do you want to be a leader? Absolutely. That's awesome. Yep. Great to see. So let's open up the platform just with a scripture, and I just really want to talk about today Hezekiah, who was a great leader and one of his great adversaries, dare we say. So first I just want to start off with Hezekiah's dad. Did Hezekiah have an amazing example? Let's have a look at that in 2 Chronicles chapter 28.
28.
Yeah, 2 Chronicles chapter 28 verse 22 to 24. I did add this one on just because I need to see the background of where Hezekiah came from. So 28 verse 22. And I'll read this one. So 2 Chronicles 28 verse 22. So it just says here, from verse 22, it says, in his time of trouble, King Ahaz became even more unfaithful to the Lord. He offered sacrifices to gods of Damascus who had defeated him, for he thought, since the gods of the kings of Aram have helped them, I will sacrifice to them so they will help me. But they were his downfall and the downfall of Israel. Ahaz gathered together the furnishings from the temple of God and cut them into pieces. He shut the doors of the Lord's temple and set up altars at every street corner in Jerusalem. So we see this example that Hezekiah had. This was Hezekiah's dad. And the example he has isn't a very good one. So what we see after this is, it says in verse 27, Ahaz rested with his ancestors and was buried in the city of Jerusalem, but he was not placed in the tombs of the kings of Israel, and Hezekiah his son succeeded him as king. So this is what happened to Ahaz's legacy. He had his son take his place, but the example that Hezekiah had, dare we say, was a terrible one. It was really in rebellion to God. So these are the leadership qualities that we don't want, really and truly. But I wanted to ask you guys a question. What qualities make a good leader? What qualities make a good leader? Martin.
Consistency.
Consistency. Oh, that's a blow to the heart right there. Anyone else? What is it going to be? Ellie? My love, go ahead.
Someone who's organised.
Someone who's organised. Oh, man, I'm failing already. Okay. Anyone else? Coral?
Someone who accepts failure well and perseveres.
Okay, I'll take that one. All right. Lee?
The first thing came to my mind was servanthood.
Servanthood. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, these are all great qualities that you guys are mentioning. Kwabena.
I would say somebody who is patient.
Somebody who's patient. Yes. Man, these are great qualities. Absolutely. These are awesome qualities to have.
Do you want to give a quality?
Yes, please don't be shy. Give a quality. That'd be great. Anyone else? So for
Great
me,
leader.
just one of the things will be courage. Someone who's courageous is just a great leadership quality. Just even though they're afraid, they just go for it. Man, I like that in a leader. That's great. So what we're going to see is we're going to see what Hezekiah did to make him such a good leader. And we're going to see this in chapter 29. So we'll start in verse... 2 Chronicles 29. We're still in 2 Chronicles 29. So we'll start from verse 1 to 2. So it says here... Actually, in fact, could I ask if Coral could read that one, please? 1 to 2, please. Of chapter 29.
Certainly, yeah.
Thank you.
2 Chronicles 29, 1 to 2. Hezekiah was 25 years old when he became a king, and he reigned in Jerusalem for 29 years. His mother's name was Abijah, daughter of Zechariah. He did what was right in the eyes of the Lord, just as his father David had done.
Wow, so thank you so much for reading that. So wow, already we see a great change from his dad. So his dad literally shut the doors of God's temple, did the wrong things in God's eyes, dare we say. But here we see Hezekiah completely turns things around despite not having an example of that in his life. So being a leader, really and truly, you do not need an example in your life necessarily to take a right decision, to make a right decision. You don't need an example from the get-go, because Hezekiah was able to turn things around, and also he was able to follow the example of someone else before his dad. So his dad was his closest example, obviously being in his generation, but he decided to do what David did, who was before his father. So this is a great example to have, to know that we can still do the right thing even if we don't have the best of upbringings, dare we say. So let's move on to what it says in verse 6. What else does Hezekiah do to make him a great leader? So in verse 6, I'll ask if Martin could read that one. Verse 6, please. Martin?
Okay. Just 6.
Yes, please.
Our fathers were unfaithful. They did evil in the eyes of the Lord our God and forsook him. They turned their faces away from the Lord's dwelling place and turned their backs on him.
Yeah, thank you so much for reading that. So yeah, he's speaking from experience. He's really speaking from experience. He's seeing that, man, the people in the past, the fathers before us, the leaders before us, they messed up. But here he is making the right decision despite seeing that. And he doesn't go and blame God, or doesn't go and blame other circumstances for the situation that they're in. Instead, he says that, look, we got to take responsibility here. Our fathers before us did this, and we've now got to change things through our actions we're about to take. So this is great leadership. He's not blaming, he's not blame shifting. He's just like, let's just deal with this. So this is awesome, taking responsibility. So now we're going to look at verse 10 to 11, see more qualities of Hezekiah, how he led the people of Israel now. And he was only 25 as well, guys. Like, we got to know that. He's only 25, and here he is making these decisions. So in verse 10 to 11, and I'll ask if... Kwabena, could you read 10 to 11, please?
Yeah. Now I intend to make a covenant with the Lord, the God of Israel, so that his fierce anger will turn away from us. My sons, do not be negligent now, for the Lord has chosen you to stand before him and serve him, to minister before him and to burn incense.
Thank you so much. So yeah, this is incredible. So not only does he intend, and is he making the decision to make a covenant with God, so to come into, dare we say, a partnership, a union with God. This is what he wants to do now, after this rebellion that his dad did prior to this. So he wants this union, But also he understands that, man, we just got to turn away God's fierce anger. God is angry, and I understand why he's angry, because of what the forefathers have done before us. This is why he's angry. So let's turn this around and get back into a relationship with God. So I love that heart. But also he says that you guys are chosen to sit down and do nothing. Is that what it says there? No, absolutely not. It says in verse 11, he's chosen you to stand before him and serve him. So wow, to do something, to serve God, to do his will. This is what he has chosen them for, to serve. So this is incredible leadership, just really calling not only himself by example. He's saying that I want to get into a relationship with God, but no, I want you guys to understand that you guys have been chosen, and you guys are to get into a relationship with God too, to serve him. So this is a great heart. Martin, go ahead.
Does the reference to burn incense really mean to be a priest in some way or other?
In a sense, it does. I mean, I have to look more into that. But burn incense, usually incense is
a layman wouldn't burn incense normally in a temple, would he?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, burn incense usually is a reference later on in the New Testament. It's a reference to prayer. So burning incense would be like a reference to praying to God.
Yeah.
So this would be sort of like a reference to that for us to look back on, really.
Yeah.
So that would have been this will be our way of burning incense, that we pray. But also another leadership quality that he had was in verse 27 to 30, and I'll read this one. So in verse 27 to 30, it says here, Hezekiah gave the order to sacrifice the burnt offering on the altar as the offering began. As the offering began, singing to the Lord began also, accompanied by trumpets and the instruments of David, King of Israel. The whole assembly bowed in worship, while the musicians played and the trumpets sounded. All this continued until the sacrifice of the burnt offering was completed. When the offering were finished, the king and everyone present with him knelt down and worshipped. King Hezekiah and his officials ordered that the Levites to praise the Lord with the words of David and Asaph the seer. So they sang praises and with gladness and bowed down and worshipped. So was this a boring time, would you say?
Definitely not. It's a time of celebration, isn't it?
Absolutely. Time of celebration. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. All that hand popping, all that jazz, everything like that. It's a time of celebration. Yeah, they were celebrating out of their minds. Like literally, it was an amazing time, and I think sometimes we lose sight of that. Really, we lose sight of that, just that celebration, that enjoyment, that gladness in our lives when it comes to our relationship with God, because it's not meant to be just sitting in a room quietly reading the Bible and just praying and having just a really depressing, down time with God. No, it's meant to be gladness, celebration, singing, being over the moon about God, about the relationship with God that you have. These guys were glad when they were doing all this. So yeah, this is the same way we've got to be as well. Just glad. Leadership is glad. It's a glad time. It's a time to be really rejoicing that we have such a great leader ourselves, which is God. And not only this, but another quality that he had is in verse 36. And I'll ask if Ruth could read that one, please. In verse 36, please.
Okay. Verse 36 says, King Hezekiah and the people were happy because God had helped them to do all this so quickly. Different translation from the NIV, sorry.
No, that's great. That's awesome. So, yeah, this is a really cool translation. I'll read this one as well, because it says, Hezekiah and all the people rejoiced at what God had brought about for his people, because it was done so quickly. So, God recognized in his word when something was done fast. And I, for one, can raise my hand up and say that I procrastinate a hell of a lot. But it's so important. But it's so important to do things quickly, to do things fast, because this is what these guys did, and God recognized it. He said that people rejoiced, all these people rejoiced because it was done so quickly. Because the restoration, because the relationship of God being rebuilt, because all the temple was opened again by Hezekiah, all this, they were glad and rejoiced because it was done so quickly. So I just want you to think about, guys, like, what are decisions that you need to make that you've been quite slow about, that may be hindering your relationship with God? What decisions then do you need to make quickly that need to change? That you need to change like quickly to really just see that other people can rejoice. And speaking about being quick, I mean, I was just thinking about just this cop who was one of a policeman who had a situation, and he caught a guy speeding, and it was really serious because he could have put people's lives in danger. And the policeman said, "Do you know how fast you were going?" The guy replied, "I was trying to keep up with traffic." The policeman said, but there was no traffic. And he responded, "That's how far behind I am. That's how far behind I am."
Yeah.
So, yeah, he was just trying to keep up with the traffic, and yeah, he just was speeding, and it was terrible. But let's move on, guys. What happened after all this happened? What happened to the people and Hezekiah? So, are things still improving? Let's look at chapter 30, verse 1. So it says in chapter 30, verse 1, I'll read this one. It says, Hezekiah sent word to all Israel and Judah, and also wrote letters to Ephraim and Manasseh, inviting them to come to the temple of the Lord in Jerusalem and celebrate the Passover to the Lord, the God of Israel. So it wasn't only about doing things quickly. It wasn't only about rebuilding this relationship with God between the people, the king, and everyone. It was also, once this happened, once they sacrificed, once they burned the incense, once they did all this, they wanted to invite people. They really wanted to invite people. And I really appreciate Lee being here as well. I just wanted to invite him today, and I'm grateful that he's here. He's a man of integrity. So thank you so much, Lee, for being here. But yeah, it's so important not to just have these things happen, but even after they've happened, we invite people. We bring people in. And this is exactly what Hezekiah did. And I just wanted to imitate that. As I was studying this out, I just wanted to imitate that heart. Just like, man, he just took a stop and invited people. So I really want to challenge you guys. I think you guys like a challenge. So next time you come along, and I sure hope you'll be here next week. I know I'm not going to have some terrible jokes in this platform, but please forgive me, guys. But yeah, I hope you come along next time and just invite someone, invite a family, friend, invite a neighbor, invite someone along and say, yeah, come and check it out. Just come and check out the Bible talk. So yeah, that's all I want to leave you guys with. I hope you guys can take on that challenge, and that will be amazing. But I just wanted to ask this question. What situation have you had where someone you were leading has opposed you? This could be kids. This could be niece, nephew. This could be your staff. Whatever circumstance you're from. Could even be your wife. I mean, I know some of you guys don't want to confess like stuff like that, but yeah, a situation where you've led, and yeah, it's been a bit rocky. So there's been a bit of opposition. Does anyone like to share? Coral, go ahead.
Yeah, I had a situation at work. I'm a nurse, and there was a situation with a patient who, a more junior nurse was looking after this patient, and I could see her moving around a bit frantically. It's like, I think she needs a bit of help. So I went and asked her, "Do you need any help?" No, I'm fine. I've got it under control. So I hover a little bit and I said, "Can you get me this?" I'm like, "No, there's something going on in there." So, and I've got another senior nurse with me who's going home after the night shift, and she wants me to show her something she needs to do to help a student. So I'm going to, and I said, "Look, no, I'm a bit concerned. I want to go in there and just make sure everything's." "No, it's fine, leave her. She said she's okay." And I'm like, "No, I'm going in there." So I go in there and I check, and another nurse has handed her something. I come out, and I'm still, there's this restlessness in me. I'm still not happy she's got full control of the situation. This other nurse is like, she said she's fine. Just show me how to do this. She was so concerned about this thing on the computer.
Yeah.
So I said, and again, it was like, no, I'm going in. We're going to have to set another date for this. I'm going back in there. So I went in, and this girl was still trying to send me off. She just didn't want my support, even though I'm a senior nurse to her.
Wow.
And I just had to start asking her questions. I had to take control. Right, what about this? What about this? What about this? What about this? Okay, have you done this? Have you done this? Until I had to take control of the situation. This patient was deteriorating really rapidly. And what she had identified was wrong with him was what was wrong. But there were 2 other things wrong with him which hadn't been identified yet. And that is a process of assessment when you're going through assessing your patient. So because she'd identified the one thing, she was focusing on that, the other problems were being missed.
Wow.
And then eventually, we had to call the doctors, we managed to arrest the situation before he actually arrested. That's how serious it was. And this guy, he was like, I'm so glad you were there, because I thought I was going to die.
Wow. That's crazy.
But I just had people pushing back at me, even the senior staff was like, we've got this under control. And I'm like, you've not got it under control as well.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that sounds stressful, very stressful. But yeah, I'm glad you got that sorted. Absolutely. Wow. Anyone else had a situation where they had someone opposing them as they were trying to lead? Ellie?
Mine's another work situation.
Yeah, go for it.
Not long before I left my last job, we had some new people start, and I work in the veterinary industry, and had to explain to them. They were student nurses who had been at university for a couple of years studying but hadn't been in practice. So then they came into practice and they knew practically how to do everything, how to place catheters, how to take bloods, how to do all this stuff. But they hadn't really practiced. They'd just done it from textbooks. So then you're trying to explain how to do things. You're trying to show them. And there was this one girl who just thought she knew it all. And I tried to explain to her how different you have to be between cats and dogs when you're doing bloods. You can wind a cat up within a second, whereas a dog is a lot more patient normally. She wouldn't listen. She wound this cat up to the point
my day's
that
been good, thank you. Thanks for asking.
I asked her to leave it alone
How's
in
your
the
day
kennel, not go near it for a few hours, cover the cage with a towel, and we'll come back, because it was so stressed out. But she didn't. I went on lunch, and she thought, I can do it while she's not here, and she'll be impressed. And I came back to her being taken out to go to A&E with several cat bite wounds, which wasn't ideal. And the poor cat, I felt sorry for the cat, but once she'd gone, within half an hour, the cat had calmed down and we could do it, and it was absolutely fine. But unfortunately, she was off for the rest of the week with cat bites and got an infection in her hand, which wasn't nice. But when she came back, she listened to everything I said.
Well, that's like Coral's example of the benefit of experience. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow, that's a great example. Does anyone else want to share for that question earlier?
I've got several examples, but I'm thinking about you guys don't know me very well, so I was thinking about, depending on your theological kind of outlook or ministry philosophy and things like that. I had several experiences in deliverance ministry, so I'm talking about opposition in the realm of the spirit, and when you're praying for people for healing and deliverance. Okay. I remember in Kenya, I was on missions preaching the gospel and praying for this lady in that situation, laying hands on her, praying for her breakthrough, for her healing. And then suddenly in this ministry moment, there's this young child, probably around 5, 6, no more than 7 years old, begins to run around circles around the lady as we're praying for her. And then as I'm saying the name of Jesus and casting out the demonic spirit from this lady, the young boy jumped at me and bit me on the leg in that ministry experience. And it then turned out he was demonized. The child was trying to protect the territory. It was a territorial kind of spirit. again, I don't know what your kind of outlook on these things are, but it was a real ministry experience, a real opposition to the gospel. And then the pastors and us, the leaders there, we brought deliverance to the young boy, and then we continued ministering to other people for the fullness of the Holy Spirit, etc., and ministering the prophetic and stuff like that. And then later on, this child come back like completely different, transformed, calm, polite, pleasant. That Jesus the same yesterday, today, and forever had literally set the child free. But that was a real opposition to the gospel in a kind of a new church plant circumstance, where you're there preaching the gospel, and it was a real spiritual kind of attack.
Wow. Yeah, thank you for sharing that, man. That sounds tough, intense. But yeah, I appreciate that you was able to help in that situation the best that you were able to be used by God to do. So that's awesome to hear, man. Yeah, grateful for you sharing that. Thank you for everyone who shared as well. So yeah, we know what it's like to have opposition in our lives when it comes to leadership, or just someone who is supposed to be, dare we say, submitting to us, but they're not. We know that can be very challenging. So we're going to see a situation like that in Isaiah 36, verse 1 to 3. We're going to see that the opposition that Hezekiah ran into. So what kind of opposition did Hezekiah had? So Isaiah 36, verse 1 to 3. And Lee, if you could read that one, please, that would be great.
Yeah, sure. I'm reading from the New King James Version. Now it came to pass in the 14th year of King Hezekiah that Sennacherib, king of Assyria, came up against all the fortified cities of Judah and took them. Then the king of Assyria sent the Rabshakeh with a great army from Lachish to King Hezekiah at Jerusalem. And he stood by the aqueduct from the upper pool on the highway to the fuller's field. Verse 3, yeah?
Yes, please.
And Eliakim, the son of Hilkiah, who was over the household, Shebna, the scribe, and Joah, the son of Asaph, the recorder, came out to him.
Thank you so much for reading that. Yeah, so we see that there's this opposition now in Hezekiah's reign. So he's in the 14th year of his reign, but now this Assyrian king comes against him. And he has experience. As we see, it says here, with large armies from Lachish to Hezekiah at Jerusalem, he came there to him with large armies already. But it says that he's got experience doing this. It says Assyria attacked all the fortified cities of Judah and captured them. So this is a serious dude. He is serious. So imagine someone, just a leader coming to you, and he's got a bunch of people with him, comes knocking at your door with a large army. Would you feel some fear? I definitely would. I'd probably be shaking in my boots. But yeah, Hezekiah probably felt some things here. It doesn't really describe how he felt, but he definitely felt something, I'm sure. So let me ask you this. Have you ever had a... Well, first of all, before I ask this, we'll read verse 16 to 20. So it says here, in verse 16 to 20 of chapter 36, so same chapter, it says, "Do not listen to Hezekiah. This is what the king of Assyria says. Make peace with me and come out to me. Then each of you will eat fruit from your own vine and fig tree and drink water from your own cistern until I come and take you to the land like your own, a land of grain and new wine, a land of bread and vineyards. Do not let Hezekiah mislead you when he says, 'The Lord will deliver us.' Have the gods of any nation ever delivered their lands from the hand of the king of Assyria? Where are the gods of Hamath and Arpad? Where are the gods of Shemravim? Have they rescued Samaria from my hands? Who of all the gods of these countries have been able to save their lands from me? How can the Lord deliver Jerusalem from my hand?" So this guy's seriously prideful. He's just like, man, the Lord can't stop me. I'm going to get to you guys anyway. And this is crazy. Like, just imagine receiving this letter yourself, and this letter comes to you that is just saying that, yeah, I'm going to be the one who's going to take you to a great land, but also I'm the one who's basically taken on all the other gods, and they failed before me. Imagine receiving this letter. It will be quite intense. Let me ask you this. Have you ever had a letter that really concerned you? Have you ever had a letter that really concerned you? I mean, I think I'll open this one up. I definitely have. Then I'll go to Ellie and Nicole. But yeah, for me, I had this was like earlier on in life. I had a letter from bailiffs, and it was actually directed to me. It was directed to my brother, but he just so happened to be living at the same place as me because, yeah, obviously we grew up in the same household, my mum and dad's house. So, yeah, he got a letter because of his bad parking. He didn't fill out the form quite right. To be honest, it wasn't that bad, the form that he filled out, but he just left it. He didn't deal with it. So in the end, the bailiffs came round. They sent a letter saying that we're going to come round and deal with this outstanding payment. And they knocked at like 5:30 a.m. in the morning one day, and all you hear is, and then we just opened the door, and my brother was speaking to them, and then he said, "Look, we haven't got the money for that. We're just young guys. We just haven't got the money." And then the guy at bailiff, basically, he went to shut the door. Bailiff put his foot in the door, so he couldn't shut it. And yeah, he's just threatening to take the TV, take mum and dad's like car, all sorts, and it was just crazy. And this was like when we was really young as well, and it's just so stupid. It would have been better for him to make the payment of £30 parking, but for some reason he didn't. And yeah, it was just a whole load of just mess. And then we ended up having to call our dad and saying, "Dad, please bail us out, please. Like, we just need your help." My brother was calling my dad, and I was begging, pleading with my dad, like, "Please just help him out, Dad. Like, it's his fault. Like, it's just not me. It's him." But so in the end, they bailed us out. But yeah, we haven't lived it down. He hasn't lived it down ever since. But yeah, I was there with him, experiencing the whole thing. So it was kind of like it was on me as well, because I wanted to get them out as well, but it just wasn't happening. So anyone else had an experience where they had a letter that was concerning? Ellie wanted to say something, I think.
Yeah, mine's to do with the car as well. I had one to say that my car wasn't insured or taxed or anything, and it was a car that I didn't even own anymore. And that apparently I had a big fine because I hadn't told them that it had been scrapped, whereas the garage had scrapped it for me, so they were supposed to be the ones that had done it. I'd done my bit and signed my bit of paper, whatever, to sign it over to them, but they hadn't done their bit. So yeah, I had a letter that was a bit concerning, and but it was fine in the end. I just wrote to them and said, "Oh, it wasn't me." I didn't hear anything else back, and they sorted it out. So
okay, great.
But I was a bit panicked for a while because it said I had a big fine.
Yeah, I can imagine. Wow, must have been tough. That's been really hard. Coral, did you want to say something there as well?
It's these cars. I'm getting them. There's nice cars as well. I've had a lot.
Got a car theme going on there.
And I had a very similar situation to Ellie as well with the car that I had scrapped. Again, same thing. So they still had me registered to this car. Wow. And it got all the way to court.
Whoa.
And I've been fined with it. I was like, when did that happen? So part of that is just me not opening all my letters. So all this went on. The letters were, and I'm like, I've never had a letter. And I went through all of this. And then I found some letters I hadn't opened. So I had received the letters. But
Wow. That sounds intense. Wow. So yeah, I think we all had some experience where we've received a letter that has concerned us in our lifetime. But yeah, I mean, just talking about these letters, first of all, I'm going to share a great quote that I saw earlier. I mean, leadership is your ability to hide your panic from others. So leadership is your ability to hide your panic from others, and it's so true. Like when you're in hard situations, I mean, especially with myself, like when I'm trying to, like recently, myself and my wife, we got some like really, really tough news that our son had just a piece of mass in the center of his brain, and that was really hard to hear. But I was just trying to not put on a face of panic at the time, because I was just trying to be like, okay, just got to try and be strong here for the family. And yeah, it's just an ability that you have to just build up, like just not to panic in those situations, even though you get tough news. So yeah, that's a great quote. I love that quote. But I was thinking about just tough situations that we can have in life, and just a boss was just really having a complicated situation with one of their staff members, and the man came late to work one day for the second time that week. His boss called him into her office and said, "What's your excuse this time?" He shrugged and said, "My clock didn't go off and I overslept." She replied, "You could at least tell me something I haven't heard before." He replied, "You are looking lovely today." So, so yeah, let's just see.
Now that one actually is funny, John.
Okay, thank you very much.
Unlike many of the others.
Okay, guys, so let's look at now how Hezekiah responds to this letter that he got, this concerning letter. How does he respond as the leader of Israel? So in verse 21, it says how he responds. So I read this one. It says, "But the people remained silent and said nothing in reply, because the king had commanded, 'Do not answer him.'" So wow, Hezekiah has this just daunting, terrible letter come through, and he's telling those that he's leading, don't reply to him, don't reply. So wow, that takes a lot of guts, because this was antagonize the king even more. That other leader, he would be very antagonized by not getting a response. So how does this all play out? We need to find out now. How does this all play out? But first of all, let me ask you guys a question. How do you feel when a situation is out of your control? How do you feel? Coral, go ahead.
Like I'm on a roller coaster or in the sea being tossed around by the waves.
That sounds about right. Absolutely. That sounds about right. Wow,
Yeah.
definitely relates to
Trying
that.
to grapple for some control again.
Yeah, absolutely. Ellie?
It depends on the situation,
Mm.
because some things that are out of my control, I think, oh, thank goodness, I don't have to deal with it. It's nothing to do with me now.
Yeah.
Whatever happens, happens. And other times, it's very just a lot of anxiety, because you want something to go a certain way, and you don't have the control to deal with it. But there are situations where it's out of your control, but actually you don't really mind. It's more a blessing, because then you don't have to be the one to make the decision.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, go ahead.
This isn't a positive thing, but normally I'd feel like just giving up. Like you get to that point where it's just so overwhelming that you just think the best thing to do, instead of continuing to feel this horrible and continuing to feel like, oh my gosh, I can't do, like, what do I do? Because I just feel like I'm just gonna let it go. Like, that's the best thing. If I can't find anything to do, or maybe it might be something where even if it's out of my control, it's like, I know I can do this. I either feel way too confident and prideful, like, I can do this, this is fine, or like, I can't be bothered.
Yeah,
This is too much. It's like either one of this scale.
Wow. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you do absolutely feel like you want to give up. Ruth, go ahead.
I don't know if this is pertinent or not, but in all honesty, especially in my work life, and I used to teach, and I was at one time a head teacher, I never really felt I was in control of anything. I felt I was always trying to manage it so that it would keep going and keep moving forward in some way, but I didn't feel in control. And because I've always thought that I wasn't really in control, I've never stressed too much about, well, I have stressed about things, but at the same time you think, well, actually you just have to do your best.
Yeah.
And you can't always do what you need to or you think you need to, but sometimes you don't know what you need to do. You just have to keep going and moving.
Wow. Yeah, absolutely. I like that resilience of just keep going, keep moving. That's definitely something that's required when things are, dare we say, not in your control. So yeah, thank you guys so much for sharing just how you feel when things are out of your control. Yeah, absolutely. I feel all those things and more. So let's see how Hezekiah dealt with this, because obviously this is a situation that was out of his control as the leader. He couldn't literally stop this man from coming against him. He didn't have the army, dare we say, to go against this man himself. So what could he do? Let's see what he does. So in chapter 37, verse 1 to 4. So we'll bring it in for a close here shortly, guys. So stay with me. Verse 37, verse 1 to 4, it says, I'll read this one. It says, When King Hezekiah heard this, he tore his clothes and put on sackcloth and went into the temple of the Lord. He sent Elkiam, the palace administrator, Shebna, the secretary, and the leading priests, all wearing sackcloth, to the prophet Isaiah, son of Amos. They told him, This is what Hezekiah says. This day is a day of distress and rebuke and disgrace, as when children come to the moment of birth, and there is no strength to deliver them. It may be that the Lord your God will hear the words of the field commander, whom his master, the king of Assyria, has sent to ridicule the living God, and he will rebuke him for the words the Lord your God has heard. Therefore pray for the remnant that still survives. So this is incredible. He saw that it's out of his control, and he publicly goes to the temple. He could have easily just done it in his royal palace and left his kingly clothes on and not made a big deal of it. But no, in front of everyone, he puts on sackcloth when all eyes are on him to make a decision. He puts on sackcloth. He goes to the temple, which is a public place. People can see it. People can see the temple. If someone's going to the temple, people know about it. And he goes there to pray. So this is amazing, just a humility from the king. And he doesn't say, like, oh, this is definitely going to happen. He's not like showing contempt for God. He's not like, okay, this is what I deserve. No, he says instead in verse 4, it may be that the Lord your God will hear the words of the field commander. So it may be. He's not being like, oh yeah, well, God's got to answer me. I'm the king. I'm awesome. I'm amazing. He's like, no, it may be that he'll hear this and act on our behalf, basically. So this is an amazing heart of a leader here, just to humble himself before God and really pray to God for the help that is required in this situation. So this guy is clearly prideful. We know that from his previous statement, but he goes on in verse 10 to do some more of this pride. And if I ask if Kwabena could read this one, please. Chapter 37, verse 10. Please. That'd be awesome.
It says, Say to Hezekiah, king of Judah, do not let the God you depend on deceive me when he says Jerusalem will not be given into the hands of the king of Assyria. Shall I keep going?
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Thank you. Yes, thank you for reading that, Kwabena. But yeah, again, this king of Assyria is saying, no, don't let God deceive you now. Don't let God deceive you. The Lord deceive you. Don't let him deceive you. He's not going to help you. He's not going to rescue you from me. He's not going to save you. So he's continuing on in this just prideful. This prideful leader is continuing on in what he's saying, and it's terrible. So let me ask you this: have you ever had a situation where the person that was leading you was a know-it-all or prideful? Have you ever had a situation like that, where the person who was leading you is a know-it-all or is prideful? And would anyone like to share that situation politely?
I'll share.
Yeah, go ahead, Kwabena.
So when I was in secondary school, during PE, right, we always had to pick teams. And obviously, because I'm not very sporty, I was always the last one picked. So woe to whoever ended up having me on their team.
Thoughts in South Africa? The
there
things
was
that are going on
this
around
one
the world are
lesson
terrible,
where
to be honest.
I was put on the team of
And
this boy who
it breaks
was
my heart to see
really,
what's going on in
really
South
good at
Africa.
football.
It is a
But
terrible
because he was really, really
situation.
good, I guess he took a lot of pride in that.
They need a lot
To
of
the
prayer.
point where he just had really bad sportsmanship
So we're
skills.
on
He
Zoom
just
at the
put
same
down
time, guys.
everyone who he thought, wasn't good enough. But little did he know that actually made his team a lot worse, not a lot better. So, I remember that day we didn't win, and I got blamed for it. But to be honest, now I think about it, I knew barely anything about football, nor did I get taught anything about it. So I think pride in leadership is really not a good thing.
Yeah.
Because not only do you disassociate yourself from the people you're supposed to lead, you kind of stop becoming a leader. Like, there's a difference between being a boss and being a leader. Because the boss tells people what to do, but a leader shows people what to do. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Yeah, thank you so much, Corner. Wise words. Wise words. That is awesome. Yeah. Prideful leaders aren't very good leaders, usually. Anyone else like to share it? So, did my love, did you have your hand up earlier? Or
Yeah, I was just going to say I've had a number of either managers or head nurses or whoever that have been like that, and it's true, they don't get very far. You end up moving on and moving up and doing other things, and they stay where they are, and nobody wants to go and work for them. Everyone that's asked to transfer to them doesn't want to. Everyone that ends up transferring there soon transfers out.
Yeah.
And it's sad to see, because a lot of them are very knowledgeable. It's just the way that they maybe put things across, or don't want to share their knowledge. It's sort of, they think they know best, so they do it all and don't really teach. And that's not, you need to lead by example, by showing and helping other people to learn. And unfortunately, it's not everybody's strength.
Wow, yeah, absolutely. It isn't everyone's strength for sure. And yeah, it just makes people not want to be around that kind of thing. And when they are, they want to get out of there as quickly as possible. So yeah, it is tough. And I really like what Kwabena said about the boss and the leader. A leader shows you what to do, and the boss just literally directs you, powers over you. But it reminds you of a quote that I saw earlier as well. It just says here, delegating work works, provided the one delegating works too. So delegating work works, provided the one delegating works too. So yeah, it's so important to lead by example, to not just say a bunch of stuff and delegate people to do work, but also to be in the work as well yourself. 100%, that's so important. So all eyes are on this leader, Hezekiah, at this moment in time to make a decision. We see that he's prayed, we see that he's gone into the temple. And what does he do once he's in the temple? Let's read from verse 14. And if I ask if Coral could read verse 14, please.
Yes. Just 14, yeah?
Yes, please.
Okay. Hezekiah received the letter from the messengers and read it. Then he went up to the temple of the Lord and spread it out before the Lord.
Yeah, that's it. Thank you. Yeah, so Hezekiah not only goes to the temple of God, but he has the letter that he received and he spreads it out before God. So this would have most likely been multiple letters that he'd received from the king of Assyria. But he spreads it out before God and really prays over these letters. So in the same way, I just want to really encourage you guys to, if there's something that's concerning you, if there's something that's, dare we say, worrying you, or something that's been hard to deal with, just spread it out before God, whether it's a bill that is quite tough, whether it's a letter that you got about one of your kids. For myself, I had to spread out the letter that I got about my son's tumour in the middle of his brain. I had to spread that letter out and just really deal with it. Really just pray to God about it, because it was out of my control. I didn't know what to do. Just even anything like that, you spread it out before God and just pray over those things. It's super important, because it really shows God that you're giving him the control. You're giving him this. You're surrendering those situations to him. So this is something that we can definitely do in our own lives. And just now bring it in for a close, guys. We need to see what happens next. So he spreads it out before God. He calls on the name of the Lord. We see in the next couple of verses that he communicates the facts about God. So he tells God that he's the Lord of hosts. God is the Lord of hosts. He says that you alone are over all kingdoms, God. He says all these things in the next couple of verses. But he also states the facts about the enemy. In verse 18, he says, "It is true, Lord, that the Assyrian kings have laid waste all these peoples and their lands." So he's stating facts about his enemy. He understands his enemy. He understands that this is a tough situation. But also in verse 20, he declares that God's glory be done. So in verse 20, he just says here, "Now, Lord, our God, deliver us from his hand, so that all kingdoms of earth may know that you, Lord, are the only God." So this is what he wants God's glory to be announced among all the kingdoms of the earth. So does he get God's attention or does he not? Let's look at verse 23 to 25. And I'll ask if Martin could read that one, verse 23 to 25, please.
Okay. Who is it that you have insulted and blasphemed? Against whom have you raised your voice and lifted your eyes in pride? Against the Holy One of Israel. By your messengers you have heaped insults on the Lord, and you have said, "With my many chariots I have ascended the heights of the mountains, the utmost heights of Lebanon. I have cut down the tallest cedars, the choicest of its pines. I have reached the remotest heights, the finest of its forests. I have dug wells in foreign lands and drunk the water there. With the soles of my feet I have dried up the streams of Egypt."
Woo! Man. So God is now speaking here, and he's telling now Hezekiah, he's answering Hezekiah and saying, look, this is what he's done. He's ridiculed me. Man, God is now involved. Hezekiah has got the attention of God, and now God is involved. God is now here to deal with the issue. But was God only involved just now, or was it before that? Let's look at verse 26. I'll read this one. So in verse 26 to 27, so was God only involved just then? So it says in verse 26 to 27, "Have you not heard long ago I ordained it? In days of old I planned it. Now I have brought it to pass, that you have turned 45 cities into piles of stone. Their people, drained of power, are dismayed and put to shame. They are like plants in the field, like tender green shoots, like grass sprouting on the roof, scorched before it grows up." So was God only involved just then, or was it before that, guys? Before, yeah, absolutely.
He's always been involved.
Yeah, he's always been involved. Even to the point of the king of Assyria taking and capturing all those cities of Judah. That was God's doing. God allowed that. He allowed it to happen. He allowed it to happen to his own people. But do you think God just did that just to be cruel to his people? Let's find out in Isaiah 42, verse 25. Isaiah 42, verse 25. Let's see why God did it. So I'll start from verse 24. It says, "Who handed Jacob over to become loot, and Israel to the plunderers? Was it not the Lord against whom we have sinned? For they would not follow his ways, they did not obey his law. So he poured out on them his burning anger, the violence of war. It enveloped them in flames, yet they did not understand. It consumed them, but they did not take it to heart." So that is why God allowed it to happen, because they rebelled against God, and God brought war on them. but he wanted them to repent and turn to him. But instead, the result was they didn't understand. It consumed them, but they did not take it to heart. So God always wants to get to our heart through these times of war, these times of suffering, these times of hardship. He wants to get to our heart. He wants us to understand the circumstances, understand the situation. But let's see what God does here in this situation. What does he do to really help Hezekiah? This is the last verse, guys. I hope you're still with me. So in Isaiah 37, verse 35 to 38. And I'll read this one. So Isaiah 37, verse 35 to 38. What is the result of Hezekiah, the leader, trusting in God? What is the result? So it says in verse 35 to 38, I will defend this city and save it for my sake and for the sake of David my servant. Then the angel of the Lord went out and put to death 185,000 in the Assyrian camp. When the people got up the next morning, there were all the dead bodies. So Sennacherib, king of Assyria, broke camp and withdrew. He returned to the Nineveh and stayed there. One day, while he was worshipping in the temple of his god, Nisroch, his sons, Adramelech and Shazazer, killed him with the sword, and they escaped to the land of Ararat. And Esarhaddon, his son, succeeded him as king. So wow, this is how God deals with it. While Hezekiah, dare we say, sleeping, is resting most likely at this time, during the night, an angel of the Lord takes out 185,000 in the Assyrian camp. One angel. So God definitely heard Hezekiah and definitely dealt with it, because this leader humbled himself. So what should the mindset of a leader be? Humility. It should be humility. It should be servitude. It should be directing others to serve and inviting them to worship as well with them, and rebuilding that relationship with God that the forefathers should have had. So this is the heart of a leader. So I just want to leave you with this quote, guys, in closing. Even if you are on the right track, you'll get run over if you just sit there. Even if you are on the right track, you'll get run over if you just sit there. So guys, don't get cozy. Don't get comfortable. Keep pressing on, keep growing, keep leading, keep serving. And I hope that you guys will join us, the person who invited you, just join us for a Bible study. Because we really want to help you to grow. We really want to help you to be a better man or woman of God. So I hope that you guys will take on that challenge right there, just to study the Bible. And it's not even a challenge, it's actually a great thing to study the Bible and to know more about God. So thank you guys so much for joining the Great British Bible Talk. And I really appreciate you guys being here. That's the mindset of a leader.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was great.
Thanks. God bless you.
Thank you. Yeah, I missed one of the scriptures, so I'll have to get it from you.
No problem.
So Isaiah 42, what verse was it?
So Isaiah 42, verse 25.
Oh, 25. Yeah, that was great. Looking through the whole life of Hezekiah, especially like looking at his father before him.
Mm.
Yeah. And then I haven't noticed before, I suppose I have noticed it in other places, but he says how it does say he followed his father David. Because you could, if you haven't looked at the bit before, you could mistakenly think, oh, was his father David? Let me go through the history.
Exactly. Yeah, that's right.
But, you know, but recognizing that is my true father. Someone who honors and follows God.
Yes.
They are my true father. Yeah, I love that. And just going back to a place of humility, because obviously the Israelites were in sin multiple times, multiple, and God was patient. So patient.
Good night, Lee. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, good night, Lee.
Yeah, goodbye, good night, God bless.
Yeah, have a great evening.
Bye-bye.
Good night. Bye-bye.
Yeah, wow, yeah, it's great.
Yeah, so it was,
Yeah, it's great going through his life. It was really nice just to see someone who really took a stand for God. It was really good. Goodbye. Bye, Ruth. Bye, Martin.
Bye, Martin. Bye, Ruth.
Bye.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
I'm going to have to go as well because my battery is quite low. But thank you guys so much. I hope you have a great evening.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining, bro.
Thank you. Yeah, we better get this boy to bed.
I get used to that new phone.
See you soon.
All right, see you then. Bye-bye.